Hello, my movie peeps. Transformers Rise of the Beast has finally rolled out into theaters. So with that, it is time for us to talk full spoilers on this movie. I kind of didn't think I was going to be making one of these videos. I had no idea what was going to be going down at the end of this movie. But now we have a lot to talk about and wonder, what are they setting up? And are they even gonna make it good? But it won't just be about my opinion, okay? I want you Transformer fans to give me your thoughts down below. Were you happy with this installment in the Transformer franchise? Do you think, nah, they kind of need to bring back Michael Bay? With what they tease at the end of this movie, did you go, oh, I think that's a good idea? Or did you go, people are actually excited for that? Okay. Alright, so just jumping straight into Transformers Rise of the Beast, reiterating my thoughts on the movie, I think this is one of the better Transformer movies. To me, I don't think it is the best one, and there's still a lot of drawbacks in here that most Transformer movies suffer from, but I had fun watching this one. I found it really entertaining, really enjoyable. I think some of the action scenes, although not having a lot of that color and flair that Michael Bay has, were a lot of fun to watch. Were very exciting. What they did with the human characters in here, I thought worked better than what they've done in previous movies. Especially with putting them in suits and making them part of the action. I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. So diving into specifics on the movie, starting with the opening sequence, what a great way to open the film. I think Bumblebee still will have the best opening out of all the Transformer films, because that's just what we dream of seeing, is a full movie that just looks like that opening. But here, this was a great way to introduce the Maximals. They're trying to save the transwarp key, make sure it doesn't fall into the hands of the henchmen who work for Unicron. We see Optimus Primal get put into power after his mentor Abe Link, which was, I thought, kind of a funny name for a Transformer. It just makes me think of Abraham Lincoln. But man, did he have kind of a badass design with those blades on his sidearm. I wish he put up a better fight against Scourge, but that was really a cool opening. It set the tone and made me super curious to see more Maximals in the movie. Too bad they're not in it for a lot. In fact, let's just jump onto that here. So obviously, to me, Optimus Primal was the best one out of all the Maximals. I liked his very serious demeanor, the way he was also the one that kind of showed Optimus Prime at this time that the humans can be good people. I also think they're definitely setting things up here so that they can make a Maximal spin-off movie and do a prequel, because they said they were on Earth for a long time, and that little village they've been a part of, they've been with for generations. And since everything is now like a cinematic universe with all these different connecting movies, I feel like that is kind of the way to go with the Maximals. Show us what they were doing on Earth when they first landed, and that's where you can bring in a lot of the Predacons from the Beast Wars series. I thought those were going to be teased somewhere at the end of this movie or be the setup for the next villain, but it doesn't seem like they're going to do that. So they could still for sure do a prequel and show us a lot of these Maximals and what they were like with the early days of Earth. It made it sound like there was a bunch of them, because when Air Razor and Optimus Primal are talking to each other, they're like, where's the rest? And she's like, I'm all that remains. And I guess jumping off that point, Air Razor, I thought she was the second best Maximal in here. She was actually the only part that actually got me emotional in this movie. While they try to like pull at your heartstrings with some of the human story elements in here, when Air Razor got sort of rust controlled by Scourge, I thought that was pretty sad. That could have been maybe a more impactful moment of the movie if they just let us spend a little bit more time with these Maximals, build them up. But man, I really felt for Optimus Primal having to kill one of his teammates. I wish I could say that Cheetor and Rhinox really had an impact in the film, but man, they were really pushed to the background, and I'm surprised. Cheetor especially, I think, is a very beloved one that a lot of people like from that animated series. He could have easily have been a new fan favorite character, but he doesn't get to do much. I think there was even like a moment in the trailer with Rhinox I don't remember being included in the movie. So I wonder if they scrapped away some scenes or they just thought it didn't fit into the film, but hopefully if they do more movies with the Maximals, man, include them more. Because I do think the film kind of lacked in also explaining their backstory and where they fit into the timeline of everything. There was that one offhand mention of, yes, Optimus Prime, I am both your future and your past. But I feel like to people who aren't familiar with the Beast Wars series or the Maximals in general, they're going to be very confused and not realize these are characters technically from the future. Moving on to talk about some of like the human elements in here. So I thought Noah as a character worked. I think he is a likable dude, but I also felt like the movie didn't need to include that much tragedy into his backstory for us to get into him. If you just explain he's a guy straight out of the military, struggling to find a job, and just needs to pay the bills for his little brother and mother, that would have been enough. So I thought it was interesting that the movie took it further and gave us this whole sick brother storyline and that he's really struggling to pay those bills. But the part for me that kind of won me over the most about Noah is once they find out what they have to go for, these transwarp keys, and that it means it could either be the destruction to Earth, or it could be the key for the Autobots and Maximals to go back to their home planet. I like the dilemma the movie set up where Noah was like, I think we should actually destroy this thing, even if that means betraying these alien robots, because we just met them like 24 hours ago. Why should we trust them? That made a lot more sense to me and felt actually realistic in the Transformers world, and it created a good dilemma because even Optimus Prime at this time doesn't trust the humans. He's very rude to them, picking them up, not wanting to include them in the mission. So when they have that scene and Noah's about to destroy the transwarp key and Optimus is like, please don't do that, I thought it created a unique dilemma in the Transformers world we hadn't seen before. I thought Dominique Fishback included in here for her knowledge of ancient stuff and how she could help out in locating the other half of the transwarp key did work to a point. I did just feel kind of confused what the relationship this movie was trying to pull off with them, because sometimes it felt like they were setting them up as platonic friends, while then other moments in the movie it felt like, oh, are they trying to give them like a couple vibe, which would be totally fine for me. But it did feel to me like the movie couldn't decide by the end whether they're just friends or maybe there could be more there. I did definitely want to talk more about Mirage because I'm happy to see a lot of people really getting into his character. I was scared people are going to walk out annoyed by Mirage, but looks like I was wrong. More people like him than hate him. And I don't blame them because he definitely was the new funniest Transformer of the bunch, and it's time we gave other Transformers kind of that spotlight. And even though I felt at times that Mirage's personality felt way alienated than the rest of the Transformers, everyone's acting so serious, dedicated, and this guy's just a big old goofball, he was still a very fun Transformer to have in there. I just wish the moment towards the end where it looks like he's about to die and he's sacrificing himself for Noah, I just didn't buy that relationship between Noah and Mirage that quick. That's where I was talking about in my spoiler-free review that I felt like there were some failed emotional moments other than like the air razor stuff when you have the walkie-talkie and the little brother's giving his big brother that pep talk and it looks like Mirage is about to die. It didn't really make me feel sad. I was just kind of like, yeah, this is a moment, all right. Sure, we'll get past it. One thing I think they did handled well with Mirage and Noah is handing over some of their alien tech to the humans, putting them in these exosuits that we've kind of seen in the animated Transformer stuff. That made the humans feel so much more useful towards the ending battle, even though it was like really convenient that what the humans had to do in here to stop the transwarp key and Unicron coming in, that display panel and device was perfectly human sized, even though this is a device meant for giant robots. It's kind of funny it would be that small. But seeing Noah in the exosuit and fighting off all these different bots, I'm like, if they do more of this in the future, I'm gonna like this. And Scourge here, man, I really want to give props for what they did with Scourge because he was a badass menacing villain. That little trait they gave him that after he's done killing a Transformer and he steals their emblem and then just attaches it to himself, oh, very badass. It was kind of heartbreaking when he did that to Bumblebee, which we'll talk about in a sec. But it wasn't even just Scourge. The two villains he had with him, Battletrap and Nightbird, I thought they also felt like real threats. I think it's better when these movies kind of just give us smaller, focused villains instead of like a gang of 7 or 8 of them. These three really got their time to shine and show that they're a real threat, and if that they go up against the Autobots, they could beat them. But that ending battle with Scourge and Optimus Prime, that was a pretty satisfying one. I thought it really showed more of that murderous Optimus Prime side that we've seen in the Bayverse, and they brought that over here into this new start. If Optimus Prime wants to rip you apart, he's gonna do it in a pretty vicious way, and I had fun watching that. But then there was that thing they did with Bumblebee here that I just kind of rolled my eyes out. So they do the thing where they kill Bumblebee in like 20 minutes into the movie. Now, because of all the trailers and marketing, I knew he really wasn't dead. He has to show up in the final battle. They've shown that in all the marketing. I knew he had to come back, so I thought it kind of sucked that they had to do this just so they can give spotlight to other Autobots, because if Bumblebee's there, he'll just be taking all that limelight. And I guess I could understand that mentality. Bumblebee is like one of the most beloved Autobots with general audiences, but one thing that they gotta stop doing with Bumblebee is talking through the radio thing. It's getting old. Give Bumblebee a dedicated voice actor, even if it's Tom Holland, okay? I said it. I want to hear Bumblebee just casually talk to the team, give out his thoughts, or be a strategist. He's obviously a good fighter. It was cute in the first couple of movies that Bumblebee uses the radio or famous movie lines to talk, but here it's just kind of overdone already. We don't need Bumblebee always speaking in that way. I feel like sometimes that just reduces his character to almost being like a droid from Star Wars, where he just makes makes beep boop bop noises all the time. Who knows, maybe I'm wrong about that and everybody still loves the radio talking Bumblebee. But I'll tell you, when Bumblebee got resurrected, and they did it well because they know people love Bumblebee, and they show his back shot coming out of the plane, going into battle mode, shooting up, my theater clapped. My theater went crazy. People love Bumblebee, man. And it really was that entire third act that had me hyped. I mentioned how I thought Michael Bay really does have a style, a color, and flair. But one thing Michael Bay definitely lacked in those action scenes is in the later half of the movies, it just felt like mush CGI. You couldn't really tell who was throwing the punch, who was dodging it. It just felt like mashed up CGI. Although this was a little colorless and lacking some nice cinematography, I could at least tell what was happening in the fight. I can see who was throwing the punch, who was dodging them, what was coming at them, and that made it more enjoyable and entertaining to see that fight scene. But with some of that stuff said, before we get into the shocking ending, post-credit scene, and what they're probably setting up for more Transformer movies, I do want to talk about a couple of Easter eggs I caught off the top watching this movie that I thought were really funny, or just cool to look at. For one, we have Mirage go into his classic alt form when he's telling Noah that if he helps him with the mission, that he'll transform into any car he wants and he can sell him off for money, turning into his classic race car form. Now I understand why they didn't have that for most of the movie. It wouldn't make sense for that car to just be out in a parking lot and hiding. It would draw too much attention, so I guess a Porsche was kind of less snazzy. Also, when Mirage and Noah are getting away, you have him talk about Mark Wahlberg. Since this movie is set in the 90s, Mark Wahlberg was still going as Marky Mark at this time, and he was gonna go pursue acting. This is a good reference because Mark Wahlberg eventually becomes the main protagonist in some of the Transformer movies. I don't know if this was a direct Easter egg or reference, but I found it kind of funny. Whenever you have Noah meet Wheeljack, which I thought they just kind of did him a little ridiculously in the movie, but whatever. He wants to speak Spanish to him, say ay papi, all that stuff, and Wheeljack accuses him of being racist. I felt like that's kind of a nod to what other people used to criticize early Transformer films for, is making those Transformers have racial-like personalities and giving them those stereotypes, and it not really aging well. Felt like they kind of even defended themselves by going, he's a robot, how could it be racist? An offhand mentioned thing that kind of gives us a hint to where the Transformers movies could go is Scourge at one point tells Optimus Prime that Primus would be disappointed. Primus in the Transformers world is kind of like the god creating Transformer. It's also usually the core of Cybertron and is the brother of Unicron, and with this movie being heavily focused on setting up Unicron to continue being a villain in this series, it looks like that might have been our first clue to who the Autobots will eventually go to so they can defeat Unicron. I'll be curious to hear if you guys caught any better ones out there. But now getting to the ending of this movie here, was not expecting this at all. So the movie's about to end. It looks like Noah's about to get a job interview, finally being able to make a living a decent way. But at the actual interview, things get a little weird because the man knows a little too much about Noah, knowing that he traveled to Peru, that he has a couple of Autobot friends, suggesting to him that him and his friends should come work for his government team. In my mind, I just thought, oh, is this like Sector 7, you know, that agency that's in the Transformers franchise? I guess that's an alright way ending to kind of tie everything up, but no! The business card he gives him reads G.I. Joe! And my mind exploded. I'm curious to hear from you guys if your theaters clapped, roared, got excited about that. My theater was dead silent. I thought I was like the only one who knew what G.I. Joe was. I was like, oh, what? And my theater was just... And it was a full house. I'm like, no one knows who G.I. Joe is? Come on. And that's a common thing I'm seeing. Some people don't really care about this G.I. Joe connection and don't want to have it part of this series, but... let me just give you my point of view. Some of y'all think I'm old, but I've never seen a G.I. Joe cartoon, and I've never bought a G.I. Joe toy. Even when the two Channing Tatum movies came out, I didn't have much of an interest to see them, and I thought they were actually just bland movies. They're not really that great, especially that solo Snake Eyes movie. I was so bored through that film. But even as someone who's not really a fan or grew up with G.I. Joe, I am a big believer G.I. Joe could be a big property. They have all the ingredients there to make something that should be making a lot of money at the box office. It's essentially like the Avengers of the Army. This government task force filled with very special operatives with all different unique tasks. You have all the makings to make a pretty interesting franchise, but you never really do it. So I got more excited just for the fact that they're gonna try doing G.I. Joe things again as a team and not do these solo movies. Now I know a lot of people will be asking, will they make those past G.I. Joe movies part of this? Oh, I highly doubt it. You're not gonna see Channing Tatum, The Rock, or Marlon Wayans, any of those people. I don't even think Snake Eyes from the most recent movie at all gonna be part of this new G.I. Joe team. I think they're gonna start completely from scratch. In fact, the only person I can already kind of think of who could be part of the G.I. Joe team, John Cena. He was a government official in the Bumblebee movie. That right now is kind of the only film canon to this new series. And we do get a direct reference to the Bumblebee film where Optimus Prime is talking to Bumblebee and says, "I know you had a human you trusted and liked," talking about Haley Steinfeld's character. And since there's been some time that's passed, I wouldn't be surprised if someone like John Cena, that government official who had contact with Autobots, then gets recruited into G.I. Joe because he has some history with some pretty weird stuff. If not, that'd be the smart thing to do here, alright? Next thing you gotta do is give us a good solo G.I. Joe movie. And by solo G.I. Joe movie, I mean a movie with a team, okay? Not focusing on one random character and giving them a film. Give us a solo G.I. Joe movie that helps connect us into this Transformers world. And I know there's already been like comic crossovers with Transformers and G.I. Joe, which is like what people are mainly using for why this is a good idea. But I just think Transformers in general has always been involved with the army. You think back to all those other Transformer movies, they're always kind of working with them. Why not just make that army group the G.I. Joes? I'm also curious to see what this war they're going after, whether it is Unicron or fighting these Autobots, or there's a separate thing happening on Earth that requires their help. I also think it's kind of ironic, the exosuit that Noah wears in the battle scene of the Transformers movie, that looks just like the exosuits in that first G.I. Joe movie with Channing Tatum. Like, they're just colored a little different, but it's the same idea. But really what I'm trying to say here, I'm excited for the possibilities, but I'm also completely understand and aware of the people who are not excited because we haven't had a good G.I. Joe movie. There's not a good track record here. Even with the Transformers films, me enjoying this movie, it doesn't give me the brightest hope that they can make this a great cinematic universe, but I'm open to the idea and I want to see it because if they nail it, the potential is huge. We saw at the beginning of this movie, they had a Hasbro logo. Hasbro owns a lot of toys. G.I. Joe might not be the only thing crossing over into this world. So I guess we'll have to wait and see, guys, but that's my thinking right now. They have an option to make a prequel with the Maximals. They'll make a sequel to this movie. They have the animated Transformer film that'll tell us the backstory of Optimus and Megatron. And now we have G.I. Joe movies possibly being made, hopefully good this time. This Hasbro universe, it's kicking off. Let me know what you guys thought about Transformers Rise of the Beast, whether you're excited for the future of this franchise, what you like, what you hated about this movie, anything and everything. Be sure and like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.